Jeff Hart's on the line right now, and there's a story in today's OD concerning the hospital issue and some of those old buildings that are being scheduled for demolition along Columbia Street. And the Landmark Society is trying to do its best to save some of those buildings. Jeff, good morning. Thanks for coming on.
Morning, Bill.
So what's the so in particular, which buildings are we looking at that you guys feel should be considered and maybe even saved?
Well, there's the Joan Tabor building over there on Columbia Street.
Yep.
If you know it at all, it's where the old photo fair store used to be. I remember going in there when I was a kid with my dad to pick up camera equipment or get film processed. That's one of the buildings it's been there. It's been kind of run down. It's been practically abandoned, and the city wants to knock it down to make room for the new hospital system.
Yeah. And how would if they're going to build the hospital there? How would that building stay? How would we be able to keep it and make it part of the new project?
Well, if you remember when Faxton was kind of built, you still had some of the houses around there that were used for the actual business offices to make room in the hospital itself for the actual patients. There's nothing that says you can't put the administrative offices or some of them into some of these buildings, renovate them, and use that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know as well as I do, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. How many times have we knocked buildings down in downtown Utica for the sake of progress and growth and the next big thing that, is going to save Utica? How many times have we seen these things really not save Utica?
I recall, and I saw this myself with my own eyes in Buffalo, where I think it was an old church, and they decided to demolish and rebuild the church, and they saved the whole front. So the entire front facade was kept, and everything after that was rebuilt. That was kind of a cool concept.
Yeah.
Well, they did that recently when they renovated that building over on Hobart and Oswego Street.
Okay.
Or Oneida Street, rather. They saved the archway from the original apartment building when they knocked it down, with the intention of putting that right there onto the facade of the new building.
Yeah. The problem, though, is you have issues of asbestos. You have buildings that have decayed over the years. Are these worth saving? I mean, can you save these?
Well, I'll tell you, Mike Lehman, who's one of our trustees, said it in the article alone. There have been buildings out there that have been in worse condition than that building that have been, successfully saved by, campaigns, renovated and reused. They've been retooled for other purposes.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing that says we can't at least try.
Right. I do recall, boy, there was one building I wish we could have saved, was the Saturday Globe building.
Yeah, you and I talked about that last year when I was in, talking about trying to save the Globe building, and that would have been beautiful. I mean, like we mentioned then, Saturday Globe ended up becoming USA Today, through its incarnation.
And just watching what urban renewal did in the 60s and 70s, it just destroyed so many main street areas. And, however, we do seem to be a lot better at, when we put buildings up, we seem to, look what they did at Ocean Blue. I mean, they were able to take that building and then add on and create something so much better than it ever was.
I mean, it was, 16 months ago when I was in there and we were talking about it, that hadn't even been opened yet, and everyone was like, they were on the fence about what was going to happen with that building.
Yeah.
Look at what that has become now.
Yeah.
Jeff, I have a couple of questions. I know you mentioned the one building that we started off talking about today. How many buildings would the Landmark Society like to save, part one? And part two is, how do you go about that? Would you have to file a lawsuit? Would you just be in a discussion with the MVHS about trying to preserve a building? Can you talk about that?
Well, ideally, we'd like to save every building we can. I mean, because there is a rich history to Utica, like I said before, if you don't learn from your history, then it goes away. What we would do, I mean, obviously we don't own the buildings, we don't own the property. We would try to work with the developers to say, hey, let's find some alternatives to save these buildings.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, maybe this story is the start of it, right? You're hoping that that's going to be the case. Open
exactly.
up.
I mean, we've got ideas that we would love to present to people. Ideally, though, that would be great. But at the end of the day, it's not our decision to make. The best we can do is hope that people appreciate the rich history that some of these buildings and the architecture provided Utica, because it is. It's a great look back at what this city was like.
Yeah. All right. Somebody wants to know if you actually live in a rehabilitated building, refurbished building.
I myself don't. I live in a house that's about 100 years old, though. It was done in the early 1900s. In fact, the house I live in is a 3-story house that originally, back when the mills were running here in the town, and Utica was still a mill town, was 3 apartments, one on each floor, that they used because, as you know, there were a lot of multifamily houses built back then to make room for the mill workers.
Yeah.
That was all converted in the 1950s to one family house.
Okay. All right. Pretty cool, Jeff. Thanks. And maybe this story will be the start of something that will move in a positive direction for you guys.
Let me pitch a couple of things to you, because you and I talked the last time. You mentioned the underground subway over at Union Station.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I thought you were talking about an actual train subway. I didn't realize you were talking about the walkway. I remember going under that when I was a kid.
I guess I kind of thought there was a train subway, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just an underground walkway.
It was an underground walkway that you went down into the basement, and that's now what we've got is that overhead walkway to get to the outer train track. But back then, you walked under the actual train tracks to get there.
There is one of those in Little Falls, where you to get from the north side to the south side of Little Falls, you walk underneath the train tracks and the highway, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
So, all right, good stuff, Jeff. Thanks, man. We appreciate it.
And this Saturday, if anyone wants to come and help out as far as a fundraiser for the Landmark Society, we're having our craft beer tasting over at the Rector Mansion number 3.
All right.
And that's going to be from 12 to 2, and then we've got a second class from 2:30 to 4:30. We're doing pretty much a beer tasting sponsored by the Stife.
Okay.
Learn what it takes to actually brew craft beer here in the area. We've got a craft beer expert coming in. $10 a ticket. We'd love to have people come out. And tonight we're doing our weekly walk and talk tour over in Clinton in the Village Square. We're going to talk about some of the rich history of those buildings there.
All right. Jeff Hart's representing the Landmark Society. Thanks for coming on, Jeff. We appreciate it this morning.
Thanks, Bill. Have a good one.